The sound of a bridge failing isn't a scream. It's a sigh, a long, agonizing exhale of rusted rebar and overworked concrete finally giving up on the world. I remember the clock on my dashboard, 5:14 p.m. The sky was the color of a fresh bruise, purple and sickly yellow, reflecting off the Blackwood Estuary. I was thinking about taxes. I was thinking about the milk I forgot to buy. I was thinking about everything except the fact that I was about to die. Then the vibration started. It wasn't the rhythmic thumping of tires over expansion joints. It was a deep, tectonic shudder that traveled up through the steering column and settled in my teeth. The car in front of me, a red sedan, suddenly dipped, not like it hit a pothole, but like the road had simply turned into water. And then I saw it. The suspension cables snapped with a sound like a giant's whip cracking the sky. One by one, the cars ahead of me vanished into the gray mist of the estuary. I slammed on my brakes, but gravity is a cruel master. The section of the road I was on tilted forward at a 45-degree angle. My tires shrieked, a useless protest against the inevitable. I watched the horizon line of the bridge disappear, replaced by the churning, dark belly of the river. 1 second. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles turned white. 2 seconds. The windshield exploded as I hit the surface. Water is supposed to be soft, but at 60 miles per hour, it's a brick wall. The impact shattered my ribs, sending a white-hot spike of agony through my chest that stole the very air I was trying to hold. The car plummeted. The world turned a murky, suffocating green. Bubbles danced like silver ghosts outside my window as I sank deeper and deeper into the maw of the Blackwood. I don't know how I got out of the car. Panic is a powerful drug. I remember the glass cutting my palms, the taste of salt and gasoline, and the crushing weight of the depths. I swam toward a flickering light, my lungs screaming, my vision narrowing to a pinprick. I broke the surface, but I wasn't in the open air. I was in a tomb. I had surfaced inside a hollow bridge pylon, a massive, hollowed-out concrete chamber that had somehow trapped a pocket of air when the structure buckled. It was dark, save for the rhythmic pulsing of a submerged hazard light reflecting off the oily water. Is anyone there? My voice came out as a wet croak. Over here, a voice whispered. It was shaky, fragile. I swam toward a rusted maintenance platform clinging to the side of the inner wall. 3 people were already there. There was Julian, a man in a tailored suit that was now ruined and clinging to his gaunt frame. Then there was Clara, a woman clutching a briefcase to her chest like a shield, her eyes wide and glassy with shock. Finally, there was Marcus, a rugged man in work blues who looked like he'd seen 1,000 bad days. But none quite like this. "We're trapped," Clara said, her voice rising in pitch. "The water, it's rising. Look at the wall." She was right. The water line was creeping up the concrete. We were in a pressurized bubble, and the weight of the entire Blackwood River was pushing down on us. But as I climbed onto the platform, coughing up river water, I realized the rising tide wasn't our only problem. The hazard light flickered again, casting a long, distorted shadow across the water. For a split second, I saw something move beneath the surface. It wasn't a piece of debris. It was smooth, pale, and far too large to be a fish. "Did you see that?" I whispered, my heart hammering against my broken ribs. "See what?" Julian snapped, his teeth chattering. "We need to find a way out. The pressure is going to burst our eardrums if we stay here." "There is no way out," Marcus said grimly, pointing upward. The top of the chamber was sealed shut by tons of collapsed asphalt and steel. "We're in a bell, and the air is going to run out long before the water reaches the top." But then, a sound echoed through the chamber. It wasn't the groaning of the bridge. It was a rhythmic tapping. Ting, ting, ting. It was coming from the other side of the concrete wall. Someone or something was trying to get in. The tapping stopped as abruptly as it began. We sat in a deafening silence, the only sound being the heavy, wet breathing of 4 terrified strangers. The cold was beginning to set in, the kind of cold that starts in your marrow and works its way out, turning your skin blue and your thoughts slow. "We have to dive," Julian said suddenly. standing up on the trembling platform. The hole we came in through, we can swim back out. Rescue teams must be up there by now. It's 50 feet down, Marcus countered, his voice steady but grim. And the current outside is a washing machine. You go out there, you get swept 5 miles downstream under the ice. You'll never surface. So we just sit here and wait to drown? Julian shouted. The panic was taking hold now. It's a physical thing, panic. It smells like sweat and copper. Suddenly, the water in the center of the pylon began to churn. A suitcase bobbed to the surface, followed by a severed bumper. And then a hand. Clara screamed. It was a pale, bloated hand, reaching out of the dark water. But as it drifted closer to the platform, we realized it wasn't attached to a body. It was just a hand, neatly severed at the wrist. What is that? Clara sobbed, burying her face in her hands. Debris from the crash, Marcus said, though his voice lacked conviction. I looked back at the spot where the hand had appeared. The water was clear for a moment as the hazard light swung around. Deep below us, tangled in the submerged wreckage of a bus, I saw eyes. Not human eyes. They were huge, lidless, and glowing with a faint, bioluminescent hunger. There's something down there, I whispered, backing away from the edge of the platform. Something that lived in the silt of this river long before the bridge was built. Julian didn't listen. He was convinced that staying was death and swimming was life. Before Marcus could stop him, Julian took a deep breath and plunged into the dark water. We watched his shadow descend, kicking toward the jagged opening at the bottom of the pylon. The light followed him. We saw his legs moving, then suddenly they stopped. He didn't move forward. He was pulled sideways. A massive, pale shape drifted into the light. A creature that looked like a cross between a human and a lamprey. Its skin translucent, its mouth a circular maw of hooked teeth. It wrapped itself around Julian, not to bite, but to absorb. We watched in silent horror as Julian's body seemed to soften, his bones liquefying as the creature began to fuse with him. There was no blood. The creature was a biological vacuum, pulling the very essence of the man into itself. Julian's eyes remained open, looking back up at us through the water, not with pain, but with a terrifying, blank recognition. He was gone in seconds. The water went still again. We're not alone, Marcus whispered, his hand going to a heavy wrench on his belt. The bridge didn't just collapse. It was undermined. Something has been eating the foundations for decades. The air was getting thinner now. My head was throbbing, and every breath felt like pulling thick syrup into my lungs. Clara was hyperventilating, which only made it worse. We have to climb, I said, looking at the rusted rebar ladder that led toward the ceiling. Maybe there's a maintenance hatch. We began the ascent. The ladder was slick with algae and ancient grease. Every time the bridge groaned, the ladder vibrated, threatening to shake us off into the waiting mouths below. I climbed first, Marcus followed, and Clara was at the bottom. Halfway up, the tapping started again. Ting, ting, ting. It was coming from inside the concrete, not from the outside. Something was moving within the very walls of the bridge. I pressed my ear to the cold stone and heard a heartbeat. Low, slow, and massive. The bridge, I gasped, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. The bridge isn't just a structure. It's a shell. The creatures, they've used the concrete as a cocoon. Suddenly, the section of the wall next to Clara exploded. A pale, wet limb, long as a man's torso and ending in 3 hooked talons, snatched her by the waist. She didn't even have time to scream before she was yanked into the darkness of the wall itself. Marcus reached for her, but he was too late. The concrete seemed to heal itself, the cracks sealing with a thick, resinous slime. Clara was gone. It's a trap, Marcus said, his eyes wild. The whole collapse. It was a harvest. They bring the cars down, they trap the survivors in these pockets, and they take us one by one. We reached the top of the ladder. There was a hatch, rusted shut with a century of salt and neglect. Marcus threw his weight against it, his muscles bulging, but it wouldn't budge. "Help me," he roared. I joined him, pushing with everything I had left. My broken ribs screamed in protest, but the fear of what was behind that concrete wall was greater than the pain. We pushed, and finally, with a groan of complaining metal, the hatch gave way. But it didn't lead to the surface. We scrambled through the hatch and found ourselves in a narrow, horizontal crawl space. It was dry, but the air was even worse here. Stagnant and smelling of ancient dust and something sweet, like rotting lilies. "Where are we?" I asked, wiping the slime from my hands. Marcus shone a small penlight he'd found in his pocket. The crawl space extended for hundreds of feet in both directions. It was a service tunnel meant for inspectors, but it had been modified. The walls were lined with a translucent webbing. Inside the webbing, we saw shapes, cars, not just from today's collapse. There were Model TS, 1950s Buicks, 90s hatchbacks, all perfectly preserved in a thick amber-like substance. And inside the cars were the drivers. They weren't dead. Their eyes were open. Their skin stretched thin over their bones. Their mouths connected to the webbing by fleshy tubes. They're being kept alive," Marcus whispered, his light shaking. "They're batteries. The bridge, it feeds on them. It uses their nervous systems to stabilize the structure. That's why the Blackwood Bridge never needed repairs. It was self-healing. It was alive." We realized then that the collapse wasn't a failure of engineering. It was a shedding of skin. The bridge had grown too large, and it needed a fresh influx of energy to complete its next stage of growth. We weren't survivors of an accident. We were the new blood for a monumental organism. "We have to blow it up," Marcus said, his voice hardening. "I have my flare gun and a small canister of welding gas in my pack. If we hit the main structural nexus, we can drop the whole thing into the river." "We'll die too," I reminded him. "Better than being a battery for the next 100 years, he replied. We crawled toward the center of the bridge, the heart of the beast. The walls began to pulse. We could feel the vibration of the cars passing on the sections of the bridge that hadn't collapsed yet. The bridge was still functioning, still luring more victims onto its back. We reached a massive chamber where the 4 main suspension cables met. It was a forest of meat and metal. The cables weren't steel anymore. They were bundles of giant nerves, protected by a thin layer of concrete. In the center sat the Queen, a pulsating mass of gray matter and eyes, her tentacles reaching into the minds of the trapped drivers. Marcus prepped the gas canister. "When I say run, you run back to the hatch and jump. The water is a gamble, but it's the only one we have." He took aim with the flare gun. "Wait," I said, looking at the Queen. One of the eyes was looking at me. It wasn't hateful. It was lonely. For a second, I felt a telepathic brush against my mind. It showed me the bridge's memories. It had been here since the dawn of time, first as a fallen tree, then a stone arch, then this steel monstrosity. It just wanted to hold things together. It just wanted to be a bridge. "Marcus, don't!" I yelled, but it was too late. The flare hissed through the air and struck the gas canister. The explosion was blinding. The heart of the bridge erupted in a fireball of blue and orange. The scream that followed wasn't human. It was the sound of 10,000 tons of steel and stone crying out in agony. The tunnel began to collapse. "Go!" Marcus shoved me toward the hatch. I ran. I didn't look back. I heard the sound of the bridge tearing itself apart behind me. I reached the hatch and plummeted back into the water of the pylon. The pressure was immense now. The bubble was gone. I was sucked out through the bottom as the entire pylon crumbled. I was tossed in the dark current, rocks and metal whipping past me. My lungs were on fire. I hit something hard, a piece of floating asphalt, and clung to it. I broke the surface of the river a mile downstream. The bridge was gone. In its place was nothing but a jagged gap in the skyline and the debris-choked water. I coughed, gasping in the freezing night air. I had made it. I was alive. I was rescued by a fishing boat an hour later. They wrapped me in blankets and gave me hot coffee. The news was already calling it the greatest structural failure in history. But as I sat on the deck, looking back at the ruins, I felt a strange itching in my palm. I looked down. A small, translucent scale was growing under my skin. And then I heard it, a faint, rhythmic tapping in the back of my skull. Ting, ting, ting. I looked at the other survivors on the boat. They were all staring at the water with the same blank, recognizing expression I had seen in Julian's eyes. The bridge didn't die. It just moved. It didn't need the concrete anymore. It had found a more mobile way to stay connected. As the boat crossed under a different bridge on the way to the harbor, I felt my heart skip a beat. I felt the vibration of the cars above. And for the first time in my life, I felt structural. The survivors weren't saved. They were converted into the bridge's new spores. As they enter the city, they carry the biological blueprint of the organism within them. Every structure they touch, every building they inhabit, begins to grow the same translucent webbing. The city isn't being built. It's being replaced by a living, breathing architecture that will eventually harvest everyone inside it. If you love this story and want more contents like this, comment, like, and subscribe to the channel. Also, check out the channel for interesting videos.